gentlemen of this committee and our specially invited team of the... A very good afternoon to one and all. This is a public hearing of the Joint Select Committee on National Security pursuant to this committee's inquiry into the status of investigations that are within the purview of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service into the events surrounding the Day of Total Policing, which was staged on March the 23rd, 2015. I would like to indicate for the benefit of all that this hearing is being broadcast live on the Parliament Channel 11, Parliament Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. May I as well inform members and those who we invited and the listening audience that you can send your comments via email at parliament101@parliament.org or on our Facebook page at facebook.com/TTParliament or on Twitter at Parliament. Today, for this public hearing, we invited 3 office holders and support staff as they saw fit. These 3 persons or office holders are the Police Complaints Authority Chairman, Mr. David West, the Commissioner of Police and officers as he saw fit, and of course the representatives of the Forensic Science Center on the issue of DNA. We are very happy to welcome Commissioner Williams and other officers of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, and I am advised that in the precincts we have representatives of the Forensic Science Center. The chairman of the PCA is not here, and we are engaged in an exchange of correspondence, this committee and that chairman, the director, sorry, and we expect that in light of that office holder's absence today, he will be with us at some stage in the very near future, presumably at our next meeting. So again, let me welcome the Commissioner of Police as I invite you for the record and formality to introduce yourself, Commissioner, and those who accompanied you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairman. I am Stephen Williams, Commissioner of Police Acting. Present with me this afternoon is Deputy Commissioner Glenn Hackett, Deputy Commissioner Harold Phillip, Deputy Commissioner Deodat Dulaljan, and the Head of Corporate Communication, Ms. Ellen Lewins.
The members of my committee, I'll begin. I am Fitzgerald Ethelbert Hines, Chairman of this Joint Select Committee on National Security, and I'd like to invite my colleagues to so do.
Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sorry, gentlemen and lady. Name is Nigel Ifritas, member.
Good afternoon. Nicole Olivier, member.
Michael Coppin, member. Prakash Ramada, member for St. Augustine. Member.
Torel Shrikisood, member.
And of course, we have as well the secretariat of this committee, hardworking and supportive as they always are. Let me remind us that it is largely the objective of this inquiry to determine the status of the investigation of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service into the day of total policing, which transpired on March the 23rd, 2015. For those who visited us very recently, post that date, and for those who missed proceedings of this Joint Select Committee earlier, this, from the public perception, was a very eventful day when a large cross-section of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service engaged in an activity that was not altogether new, roadblock exercises as it were, but it was very unique and very different because it was very, very widespread in the main city centers around Trinidad and Tobago. It was very much sustained, and it had a serious impact on public activity on that day. It led to traffic congestion. It led to gridlocks. It led to public outrage. It led to some praise for the police. It all found itself the subject of significant public discussion at home and abroad, and resulted in the matter coming before this Joint Select Committee. And of course, thereafter, certain recommendations by that committee were rendered. Let me, for the benefit of recall Commissioner and members of the public, identify what those recommendations were. One, that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service should complete its investigation into the roadblock exercises conducted on the 23rd of March 2015. And the findings of the investigation should be forwarded to the Police Complaints Authority to complete its own investigation, as well as to the Police Service Commission. Two, the investigations should examine the role of the Guard and Emergency Branch in the roadblock activities of March the 23rd, 2015. Three, the relationship between the officers conducting roadblock exercises and the Trinidad and Tobago Social Police Service, Social and Welfare Association should be investigated. I must add, bearing in mind that this association is effectively the representative body of police officers, and we must recall, was at the time advocating for improved terms and conditions for members of the police service. And four, I quote again, the relationship between the officers conducting the roadblock exercises and those attending the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service Social and Welfare Association meeting on the 19th of March 2015 at the offices of the Guard and Emergency Branch should be investigated. Those were the recommendations of this committee following its interrogation of these issues. They continue. 5, the role of Inspector Roger Alexander in the roadblock exercises should be further investigated. 6, The role of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service Social and Welfare Association in the active management of the concerns of police officers within the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service should be examined. 7, the levels of awareness of Assistant Commissioner of Police Acting Garfield Moore and Senior Superintendent Joanne Archie of roadblock exercises on March the 23rd, 2015 should be further investigated. 8, the role of the Guard and Emergency Branch in relation to the provision of security of the Parliament should be immediately reviewed. 9, intelligence gathering as an area of law enforcement should be given extra attention and possibly enhanced in order to prevent similar occurrences like that of March 23rd, 2015. 10, the quality of human intelligence resources which could detect internal threats should be examined and improved. And 11, finally, the Police Service Commission should examine the number of acting appointments in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and request that the Commission of Police Acting seek to rectify same. And the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service was mandated to do these things, to investigate as was required, and to treat with all of these issues. And these were the recommendations of that committee. I wish to acknowledge receipt of a letter from the Commissioner of Police dated February 26, 2016, in response to a request by this committee. This committee wrote to the Commissioner requesting responses on the matters that I have just raised. And for the benefit of the viewing and listening public, and for the benefit of those who may not up to now have been privy to the contents of this letter, I wish to read into the record the terms thereof. February 26, 2016, Mrs. Jackie Sampson Miguel, Secretary to the Committee, Joint Select Committee of Parliament on National Security, Level G, 7, Tower D, Port of Spain, International Waterfront Center, 1A Ricing Road, Port of Spain. Dear Mrs. Sampson Miguel, status report on the recommendations of the Joint Select Committee on National Security, 2014 to 2015 session, 10th Parliament. I refer to your correspondence dated February 2nd, 2016. Your reference, PAL, 14/3/43, Volume 2, on the subject matter, and wish to advise on the action that has been taken. The recommendation for the continuation of the investigation by the police service has not been pursued because the Director of the Police Complaints Authority has undertaken to do a comprehensive investigation into the matter. We have provided full cooperation to the PCA in its investigation, making available all officers at all levels from the Commissioner of Police down to constables to be interviewed by the investigators of the PCA, and also made available all documents requested. The Police Complaints Authority has been addressing those recommendations identified by the Joint Select Committee, and I await the outcome of that investigation to implement any recommendations. Full stop. Yours sincerely, Commissioner of Police. With these items for recall now behind us, I would like to ask you, Commissioner, for any opening comments that you may wish to make, you and or any of those who accompany you in this regard. The floor is now open to you. Thank you.
Honorable Chairman, I do not have any opening comments to make.
The recommendations of the Joint Select Committee were directed to you, Mr. Commissioner. To you. And it is interesting to note that you opined in your letter that you have left all of these recommendations to the chairman of the Police Complaints Authority. That strikes us a little bit strange, because one takes it that while the Police Complaints Authority is established under law and has clear functions and a mandate, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, led by your good self, also is established under law and also has clear responsibilities and a mandate. Some of the matters that were recommended, in my view, fall squarely within the responsibility of the Commissioner of Police and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Would you like to tell this committee on what basis you found it necessary or useful to leave this committee's recommendations entirely and exclusively, 11 of them in number, to the Office of the Director of the Police Complaints Authority?
Honorable Chairman and members of the Joint Select Committee, as I summed up the recommendations made by the Joint Select Committee, they generally are built around the continuation of the investigation with clear mandates to specificities in relation to how the continuation of that investigation should be conducted. By virtue of the Police Complaints Authority Act, Section 48, subsection 2, having referred copy of the investigator's report to the PCA director, the law imposes sole responsibility on the PCA director by virtue of the said Section 48, subsection 2. And it's in those circumstances I await the outcome of that investigation to be conducted by the PCA, so that I can follow through on whatever comes out of that investigation.
Some of these recommendations, one of them, for example, item 11. No, let's take item number 10, which says the quality of human intelligence resources which could detect internal threats should be examined and improved. Do you think that that requires the outcome of the PCA's investigation before you could approach it?
Chairman?
Yes.
The issue of the intelligence within the police service and its improvement is something which is being addressed on a continuous basis, based on the available resources and based on the levels of training that we see are relevant for such improvements.
Well, yes. And since it is continuous, and the committee had suggested to you that you tell us, well, you do something about it. And when we wrote for an update, you tell us that all of those recommendations, including that one, awaited the outcome of an investigation by the PCA. That is what I found strange. We found strange. We couldn't understand that. So is it that you're now correcting that position?
I would like to indicate, Chairman and members of the committee, the majority of the recommendations that the committee made to the Office of the Commissioner are built around the continued investigation of the matter. Majority of the recommendations. That particular matter surely can be addressed and has been addressed on a continuous basis by the police service. And if I may bring added clarity to it, that matter is one which is distinct and separate and apart from the general continuation of the investigation.
So you could understand why this committee found it a little strange.
I do understand, Chairman.
Good. Now, let me take you then to recommendation 8, which says the role of the GB in relation to the provision of security of the Parliament should be immediately reviewed. Would you agree, Commissioner, that that too has little connection to the outcome of the PCA's investigation?
That matter has been effectively addressed, and another report would have been submitted in relation to issue of GB and its role with the Parliament.
Could you, therefore, for the benefit of the Parliament and for the public, tell us in essence what has been done to, well, I don't know. Okay, let me look at another issue. Yes. Mr. Ramada, you have a question? While I get to this.
I'm most grateful to you,
Please.
Chairman.
Please, go ahead.
Commissioner, good afternoon, sir. Is it your view that the actions or possible actions of police officers on that day of total policing involved only potential criminal offenses?
It is not my view, and I have not expressed any such view.
No, don't get me wrong for a moment. I'm just inquiring as to the basis upon which you've taken the position that the PCA is authorized and only the ones who are authorized to conduct the investigations into this matter. Did you see yourself then, as Commissioner of Police, having no role whatsoever in terms of disciplinary investigations of what may have happened on that day of total policing?
The issue which I am confronted and was confronted with is a matter of jurisdiction. PCA, under the law, I had an obligation to pass the report, a copy of it, to the PCA. PCA wrote back to me indicating that they will be pursuing the investigation, and they requested my cooperation, and I have extended full cooperation, including making myself available to be interviewed and give a statement, and every other officer and all the demands. The main thrust of the investigation was built around serious police misconduct.
Could you remind us as to the date that the jurisdiction passed for the investigation to the PCA?
Well, I wouldn't be able to, off my head, give you the date, but I actually can source the date. Because I wrote to them, and that correspondent has a date, but I can source that.
Yes. Now, back to where I started. The PCA has jurisdiction to investigate a certain quality of conduct. Do you agree? And it's not exclusive that you will always retain some level of jurisdiction to investigate certain quality of conduct of your officers. Do you understand the question?
I don't.
Well, let me help you a little bit. Can the PCA investigate, what shall I say, administrative failures of your officers as distinct from criminal conduct?
If we are making reference to administrative failures as matters which fall under serious police misconduct, PCA has that sole responsibility. General administrative failures is not the extent of what we were considering.
Well, that is where I think we need to examine that the PCA will have their duty to investigate certain things. But there may be other things that would still remain within your purview, and I think we need to examine what would be under your purview to continue the investigations on, and not to pass it wholeheartedly and wholesale to the PCA. It's been some time, and we are waiting as a committee, and we've had no response yet from them. And we're today, of course, hearing your interpretation, not just today, but in the past. We have not moved anywhere forward at all as to what happened on that day and certain reports that we were expecting. So could we ask you to examine with a different eye the jurisdiction that you may have still within your bosom to continue some level of investigations on this matter?
Commissioner, good afternoon, members. Perhaps I might inquire of you, Commissioner, as we are on the topic of jurisdiction. It may be useful to perhaps allow us to understand your perspective as the Commissioner of Police as to how you see your constitutionally grounded powers to have absolute management of the police service in the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago as not allowing you the jurisdiction to act upon this matter separate and apart from the PCA's rule, which has another source of authority. Perhaps you could explain that.
My constitutional jurisdiction is subject to other specific legislative provisions. And it is one which I exercise, and I exercise it in keeping with the law, as it provides in numerous different acts and regulations. So the general provision under the Constitution, which speaks to the Commissioner of Police having complete power to manage the police service, is subject to specific pieces of legislation, and the PCA Act is one such piece of legislation which actually specify the limitation that is placed on the office of the Commissioner of Police in express terms.
Thank you, Commissioner. So following upon that answer, insofar as the PCA Act deals with professional misconduct of a certain type, and insofar as the responses coming from your office in the inquiry which resulted in a report, which coined a very interesting expression, malicious obedience, is it that you consider that there was nothing in that day of total policing which you have jurisdiction over?
I wouldn't say that. In fact, I shared with the Joint Select Committee that out of the report which was submitted by the investigator, there are several recommendations that he made, and I shared by way of correspondence that I have followed some of those recommendations, and I indicated how I followed those recommendations.
Lovely. So the recommendations, just to be clear, were recommendations for the improvement of the service going forward, or were they in fact recommendations for action for any breaches within your jurisdiction? Which were they?
They were mostly recommendations for improvements.
Lovely. Following upon your answer to the question, 2 questions prior, may I ask you this then? Insofar as the report which spoke to malicious obedience had matters which were broader than those which the Police Complaints Authority could act upon, and therefore stood as matters within your jurisdiction for action for breaches discovered during the day of total policing, what have you done by way of action upon those breaches that you can report to us on?
The substantive report addresses serious police misconduct. That's what the substantive report addresses. The investigator, in his coined term, and it's not the police commissioner's coined term, the investigator in his coined term speak about malicious obedience. It addresses the issue of serious police misconduct. What we saw is that the investigation, because of time constraint, was not done in such an extensive way, which it covered everything. And in those circumstances, the investigator reported within the time frame, and following that, the PCA took over the investigation of serious police misconduct. And from that point in time to this date, we have done everything possible by way of the request of the PCA to provide them with all that they required, including making every officer available that they requested. I myself was requested to be made available for interview, and I made myself available. The deputy commissioners were requested, and they made themselves available, and I made every other officer available, and all the documentation that they requested, I made available.
Thank you, Commissioner. May I ask you then specifically, 1, has the TTPS, because you just mentioned that insofar as the time frame was short prior to the production of the report, the specific recommendation made by the Parliament to the police, to you in writing, was that the TTPS should complete its investigation into roadblock exercises which were conducted on March 23rd, 2015. Has the TTPS completed that exercise?
The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service has not continued any investigation into that total policing day issue. It was all built around roadblocks.
Thank you.
And we have not continued. We have passed on all the relevant documentation and support to the PCA for them to complete their investigation.
So may I ask this of you, please? By way of letter, February 2nd, 2016, from this Joint Select Committee of Parliament, the specific recommendation made to you was that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, which you have responsibility for under the Constitution, should complete its investigation into the roadblock exercises conducted on March 23, 2015, and the findings of the investigation should be forwarded to the PCA to complete its own investigation as well as to the Police Service Commission. So you are confirming to us that you did not comply with that recommendation.
I'm also sharing with the committee that, in my opinion, Section 48, subsection 2, having passed on to the PCA by way of the requirement of the law, the content of the investigation done by the police at that point in time, and the PCA undertaking to do a full investigation into serious police misconduct, which involved roadblock exercises, the police service at that point in time was now awaiting the PCA's outcome and was cooperating fully with the PCA for the completion of that investigation.
So the answer is that you have not completed the exercise which you were requested to do, yes or no?
The answer is that I have not pursued any further investigation in light of the PCA undertaking an investigation on the law, which they have a sole responsibility to do. The word is sole.
Did you write to the committee to indicate that you would not be doing that for those specific reasons?
I did not write to the committee indicating any particular reference to the law.
Because you appreciate that we could have assisted you by way of request for interpretation upon what your jurisdiction was. May I ask as well, Honorable Commissioner, the investigation into the role of the GEB, as the chairman put to you a short while ago, in the roadblock activities, was also to be conducted by the TTPS, as was the relationship between officers conducting the roadblock exercises. Similarly, the relationship between officers conducting the roadblock exercises and those who were attending the particular meeting on the 19th of March at the offices of GEB should have been investigated. The role of Inspector Roger Alexander into the roadblock exercises, the role of the association's active management, the level of awareness of specific ACPs, etc. Have any of those requested recommendations and actions by the Joint Select Committee committed into writing by way of its letter to you on February 2nd, 2016, have any of those been carried out by you?
As indicated earlier, I saw all those matters relating to one item, total policing, roadblock exercises, GB, any unit, all involving one activity of a day. And all those matters I encapsulated in my response to say that the Police Complaints Authority was the party at that point in time, now taking full charge and responsibility for investigating that matter.
Last question from me. Thank you, Honorable Commissioner. In the 4-month period between the letter of February 2nd, 2016 to today's date, nearly 1 day shy, have you put into writing any response to this letter so that the committee can complete its response on the item by item requests of you so that we could then make a report to Parliament? So have you committed your specific responses on each item in writing to the Joint Select Committee of the Parliament at any time in the period February 2nd, 2016 to June 1st, 2016?
I submitted a response to the Joint Select Committee. I have not committed item to item, line by line, a response.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And just to confirm that, I do see now a letter of February 26, 2016, and that's the letter you refer to.
Yes, Honorable
Thank
Member.
you, sir. Appreciate it.
Commissioner, let me ask this. In all that you had become aware of up until the time you transposed the responsibility to the PCA in accordance with Section 48, as you told us, did you see in all of this any insubordinate or oppressive conduct on the part of any officer or officers out of that event?
I have not gone into the investigation other than to address the recommendations made by the investigator.
Thanks.
And those recommendations, I have submitted what I have done on those recommendations.
Thank you. In all of this, did you see anything that reflected disobedience to orders by any of the officers under your charge in all of this matter?
The answer is the same. I have not gone into the investigation. The investigation was not a complete one. We reported to the Joint Select Committee here. The investigator himself was here. He accounted for the time frame that he had, and all of us accounted for before the Joint Select Committee.
Well, you know, Commissioner, to learn that you, as Commissioner, did not go in to whatever the extent of the report that was in front of you revealed is more than interesting, if that's what you're telling us. Because as the member who spoke before me was pointing out, you have certain constitutional responsibilities, and you, of course, have responsibility under the Police Service Act and the Police Service Regulations. Let me remind us about Regulation 150. Some of the disciplinary offenses thereat are, 1, discreditable conduct, which may not be serious police misconduct, worthy of the attention of the PCA. 2, insubordinate or oppressive conduct, again, may not reach the standard of serious police misconduct to attract the attention of the PCA. Disobedience to orders, breach of confidence, and corrupt practice. These are items in Regulation 150 that you have responsibility to oversee, to manage, to administer. And to learn today that you have not gone in great detail, I'll tell you why it troubles me and us. Because, in truth, the reason why you are here today is because the public who we represent as a parliament and who you serve as Commissioner of Police, there's a sense of disaffection, a sense of dissatisfaction with this matter. So when we summoned you here, we summoned you thinking that you would have grasped the opportunity to salve this disaffection from the public, because they want to know what happened. There was thorough interrogation in a previous manifestation of this committee. There was thorough public discussion, toing and froing, social media on the matter. The public themselves suffered directly as a result of the activities of that day. And for the public to see you before this committee again today, to hear that you did not go in great detail to the report that was available to you, and that subsequently you passed it on to the Police Complaints Authority, having nothing further to do with it. And the reality that up to today, that public of which we speak and we serve has not had any sense of finality. The reality is, even the PCA has not yet reported to you or to the country as to the outcome. And the PCA was supposed to be here today. And of course, that had to be set for another occasion. In short, the public wants answers. And on their behalf, I ask whether in your general terms of reference, in your general duty as Commissioner of Police, you have found so far nothing that you considered worthy of further pursuit and investigation. Simply leave it up now to the Police Complaints Authority, notwithstanding that there may have been matters, as I just quoted them, that are short of matters that might attract the attention of the authority. This does not lend itself very well for public consumption. What is your reaction to that?
I'll share some slight disagreement with your viewpoint on the matter. Where I sit, discipline is a matter which the regulation requires that I stand above and away from. The issue of whether there is some, as you refer to it, some breach of the regulation is a matter which has to be dealt with other officers, separate and apart from the office of the commissioner. The office of the commissioner, by way of the regulation, has the responsibility for imposing the ultimate disciplinary sanction up to the point of dismissal. So it has to be dealt with by others. When I share with you, it's the exact position I would share with anybody else in relation to matters involving discipline, because that is what is required of the officer commissioner to stand away from matters like those. I also shared with you that out of the investigation that was done by Acting ACP Edwards, the recommendations that he made, we actioned many of those recommendations. So it's not that nothing was done. We actioned many of those recommendations. The recommendation of the Joint Select Committee for the continuation of investigation is one which I shared with you, that under the law, the Police Complaints Authority, the law speaks to a particular thing, and it gives an independent body, the PCA, the authority to address serious police misconduct. And it also says that they have the sole responsibility, and that is where it is vested in them. And Section 48, subsection 2 is clear. If my interpretation is wrong, well, I see it as a literal, clear provision of the law. And I've done what I'm supposed to do, and I'm dependent on the PCA to complete their investigation. I cannot dictate to them how fast to do their investigation.
Thank you very much. Before I allow my colleague, Ms. Oliver, to make an intervention, we, this committee, are acutely aware of the act that governs the operation of the Police Complaints Authority. But for the benefit of those who are hearing us and looking at us, let me say, for their benefit, because we know you are acutely aware as well, the PCA is empowered to undertake audits for ascertaining if there is corruption within the police service, as well to gather evidence that may be admissible in the prosecution of a person who is not a police officer for a criminal offense in relation to the police service. 3, it has the power, of course, to collaborate with persons or bodies, may it be public or private, in the performance of its functions. And it can conduct an investigation on its own initiative on the basis of a complaint made by a member of the public, a police officer, a public body or authority, or the appropriate unit or a disciplinary tribunal of the police service. We understand the role of the PCA, Commissioner. I'm simply saying, as I press on to invite another member, and the idea of they having the sole authority, we are suggesting to you that two things. The general role and responsibility and authority of the police commissioner never stops. It may coincide at times with what the PCA is doing, but the role of the commissioner doesn't stop. And further, there may have been breaches of the police regulations detectable in all the reports and the investigation of Mr. Edwards that may not have been serious enough to attract the attention of the PCA, that may have fallen squarely within your purview, but they have not received any attention, perhaps because, as you have said, you did not go thoroughly into it. And I'm saying, as representative of the public, that does not make me feel very comfortable. That's all, Madam Oliveri.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Mr. Commissioner, one of the recommendations of the Joint Select Committee indicated that intelligence gathering as an area of law enforcement should be given extra attention and possibly enhanced to prevent similar occurrences. I imagine this would have come out of the belief that several senior members of the service were not aware of an action being planned. So I would like to ascertain from you, following the events of March 23rd, what actions, if any, have you taken to improve the intelligence gathering capability within the service?
In this particular matter, the special branch is of greatest concern to intelligence gathering. What we have done, we have met with the special branch, we have highlighted the weaknesses generated and identified from this investigation, which was done by Acting ACP Edwards. And we have, in fact, carried out extensive training to improve the special branch. We have also done extensive training of other units in the police service, including the criminal gang and intelligence unit.
In addition to the special training that you would have done, has the service sought to acquire any new equipment to help with intelligence gathering, and any other measures have been taken to improve the overall intelligence gathering capabilities?
Yes, the police service has acquired additional technology and has benefited from donations of technology from other organizations.
Repeat what you said. Sorry, the quality of human intelligence resources within the police service, which could detect internal threats, should be examined and improved. I think you did agree that that one did not hinge directly on the outcome of the PCA's investigation in respect of Section 48 of their authorizing legislation. So, I would like to ask that you issue a report to this committee in respect of the matters that you have addressed in those recommendations. I was about to ask in this public forum about some of them, and then my public spiritedness told me that I should not. However, I would ask that you indicate to us in writing what are some of the things you have done to bring about the improvements that the recommendations directed your attention to. Can we look forward to that?
I will so submit, Chairman.
Much time in there. Yes, and Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable Commissioner, would you mind please including into writing how it is you have formed the view, or the basis upon which you have formed the view, using a word you used in the past, that you are stopped or precluded from acting upon the recommendations which this committee asked you to do in writing by its letter as a result of a collision with the PCA Act. I'd be very interested to understand that in a little better detail. If you have been the beneficiary of any opinion or advice which you base your estoppel upon, then would you kindly provide that advice to us as well?
Is to warmly and sincerely thank you for Commissioner of Police for taking time out, along with your senior operatives and other staff, to come before us this afternoon and to give you notice that we will be asking you to be with us sometime in the not too distant future, because there are some other matters. We'll write to you. There are some other matters that we would like addressed in the public interest from the level of this committee. I think that the promise that you made to provide the report that we sought, that should, how much time do you think it would take you to do that, Commissioner?
1 week's time.
1 week's time, that would be quite fine. We'd like to be even more generous, Commissioner. We would say by the 10th, we'd give you a little more time, because we know you are heavily burdened. Lots of stuff to do. So I would like sincerely to thank you. I would like to thank you profusely. And while I have your attention, in particular, on a matter that is not closely related to this, I would like to thank the officers, the men and women of your police service, for your general efforts to keep this place as whole as it ought to be. I know yours is a tough business. I know that nobody takes time to measure the preventative aspect of your presence and what you do. And most times we just look on other things. But we, this committee, understand full well the challenges that a modern, fast-paced society that is Trinidad and Tobago poses, and we wish you very well, and to assure you that our interrogation this afternoon on behalf of the larger Parliament and on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago is with nothing else but noble intentions, twofold in this particular regard. One, to assist you in clarifying the approaches that you would take in serving the country as you want to and as you should. And two, to give the public, because we are always mindful that they are the ones who pay us to serve them, to give them information and to give them the comfort that the best is being done to assist and to protect them, and more acutely, to assure them that if there's any attempt to cover up anything, the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago will be no part of that. So it is against that kind of background that we interrogate as thoroughly as we have, because they are looking on and they have a sense, they have a feeling at any rate, not a sense, a feeling that somebody is covering up things in this country. And we have a duty to shed light on those things. So it is in that regard that we would have summoned you here. And we thank you very sincerely for your work and for coming, and put you on notice that we should have you with us in the not too distant past, yet again. In the not too distant future, I'm so sorry. Commissioner?
Thank you very much, Chairman and members. And we will continue to do our best in serving this country and responding to the Joint Select Committee on any request that it is made of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. God bless you all. Thank you. Committee members, we have some other business to sort out. We have other people with us. And therefore, this meeting with the police service is now formally suspended.
Follow the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago on Twitter. Our call sign is @TTParliament.
The Treasury building's monolithic design is a striking presence on the Brian Lara Promenade. It has been a place of firsts in Trinidad and Tobago's history, from its earliest incarnation to the stately building it is today. The Treasury building is not just an important historical structure, but it is also one of the finest examples of Art Deco architecture in Trinidad. Upon his appointment as Governor to Trinidad and Tobago, Sir Lewis Grant set about constructing the Treasury and Rum Bond in 1831. The building took up a large area between the southern ends of St. Vincent and Edward Streets. A significant part of the upper floor of the building housed government offices, as well as Grant's own residence. The building also held a newsroom and a general post office. On August 1st, 1834, thousands of enslaved people gathered in front of the building steps as the Emancipation Proclamation was read by Governor Sir George Fitzgerald Hill. However, the announcement that slavery was being replaced with a mandatory 6-year apprenticeship system incensed the crowd, whose freedom was being snatched away again. They began to protest, demanding immediate freedom, shouting, "Partisan, partisan," French for no 6 years. Hill called in the militia to disperse the crowd. 4 years later, on August 1st, 1838, a new ordinance brought an end to the apprenticed laborer system. Finally, full emancipation for all.
And it must have been an incredibly emotional moment for the ex-slaves of Trinidad, because there is this massive change in station in life. There's a massive change in mode of existence that took place. It was one of those instantaneous moments when the paradigm had shifted. And the Treasury building, what was then known as the old government buildings, was one of the most emotionally charged places in Trinidad at that point in history.
On June 25, 1932, the building was consumed by fire and destroyed.
And it was one of the spectacular fires of Port of Spain's history, because it had never ceased being a rum bond. So when it caught fire, all the rum caught fire with it, and the gutters outside the building were running with liquid fire.
The foundation stone for the new Treasury building was laid in 1936. Final construction on the Treasury and General Post Office building was completed in 1938. It was designed by British architect Hubert Brinsley in the Art Deco style.
Out of Art Nouveau, there was a transition to Art Deco, which was very, very simple architecture. Very little embellishment, very little decoration. The discipline of the building reflects what a treasury should be: disciplined and secure.
The dramatic exterior of the building was made of concrete and black granite. Sturdy iron safes were imported from Britain and have stood the test of time. Some of them are still in use today. The Treasury building has been home to such agencies as the General Post Office, the Central Bank, and the Auditor General's Department. In 1966, it became the first site of the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago. Since the mid-80s, however, it has been solely occupied by the Treasury Division. On August 1st, 1985, 147 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was read on the steps of what is now the Treasury building, crowds of people gathered in front of the building again, but this time it was to commemorate the first Emancipation Day holiday. Today, this stately building is important, not only for its function and architecture, but also for its history.
Parliament outreach.
One thing I remembered was the way in which Parliament takes an issue and deals with the issue. You know, sometimes from an area our community fights about, we have so much resources, and why does an issue take so long to be dealt with, and how the President of the Senate handle the issues and the procedures in which they take an issue and deal with it. That was my most memorable.
From this lecture today, I learned about the different parts and the arms of government and how they react to different circumstances and the decision making and who takes up the decision making to Parliament.
Parliament outreach. Check our website for showtimes, ttparliament.org. Follow the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago on Twitter. Our call sign is @ttparliament. You're viewing the Parliament Channel 11, also broadcasting on 105.5 FM. This is the Parliament Channel and Parliament Radio 105.5 FM. This is the Parliament Channel and Parliament Radio 105.5 FM.
A very good afternoon to you all, ladies and gentlemen. As I reconvene the public hearing of this Joint Select Committee on National Security pursuant to this committee's inquiry into the operations of the Forensic Science Center and the issue of DNA sampling in Trinidad and Tobago. Let me, for the formality, in case you missed it, indicate that this hearing is being broadcast live on the Parliament Channel 11, Parliament Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Might I as well inform members of the viewing and listening audience that they can send comments via email at parl101@ttparliament.org or on our Facebook page at facebook.com/ttparliament or on Twitter at Parliament. Let me welcome formally again the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of National Security, and the officials of that ministry, as well as the officials of the Forensic Science Center to this meeting. And we begin with my requesting that you introduce yourselves to us and to members of the public in the order that you see fit, beginning, of course, with the Permanent Secretary.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members. My name is Simeon Yearwood, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of National Security.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the Joint Select Committee. I'm Vel Lewis, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of National Security as well.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Maria Joseph, and I'm the Deputy Permanent Secretary acting in the Ministry of National Security.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. I am Joy Sipasad Buru, Acting Director HR in the Ministry of National Security.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is June Thomas, and I'm the Director of Finance and Accounts, Ministry of National Security.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Honorable AG, and members of the committee. I'm Glenn Parmuser. I am the Acting Director of the Forensic Science Center. I might add Acting Director for 2 weeks, and probably another 2 weeks, but substantively Deputy Director of the center overall.
Good afternoon, committee. My name is Mark Lachman, Project Manager with the Ministry of National Security.
Thank you all very much. My name is Fitzgerald Hines. I'm chairman of this committee, and let me invite my colleagues to introduce themselves, starting on my left.
I'm Michael Coppin, I'm member.
Prakash Ramada, Member of Parliament for St. Augustine and member.
Torel Shriki-Soon, member.
Faris Al-Rawi, Member of Parliament for San Fernando West and member.
Nigel De Freitas, member.
Nicole Olivier, Member of Parliament for Libre, member.
Chairman, permit me, there's one more member for our team.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Derek Sanka. I'm the Acting Scientific Officer 3 at the Forensic Science Center.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that. And let me indicate that we have other members of the staff of the Parliament here who act as the secretariat to this committee, and they are well known to you in Trinidad and Tobago. They prefer to remain as good public servants, faceless if they can, and quietly behind the scene, but they are here with us. Thank you very much. Let me remind us that we are focused today on really four objectives. Four objectives of this inquiry are to gain an understanding of the operations of the Trinidad and Tobago Forensic Science Center, to determine the effectiveness of forensic sampling and the process of the collection of DNA in criminal investigations. Thirdly, to identify the current challenges faced by the Trinidad and Tobago Forensic Science Center as it relates to effective forensic services. We had as well listed among these objectives to gain an appreciation of the status of the Trinidad and Tobago Forensic Science Center ISO IEC 17025 standard according to the World Health Organization, but that we consider has been to some extent satisfactorily treated with. Let me remind members that we did receive a written submission from the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of National Security, dated March the 4th, 2016, in response to a written request from this committee. With those things behind us, I would like to invite you, Mr. Permanent Secretary, Ministry of National Security, to make brief opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon again to all. The portfolio of the Trinidad and Tobago Forensic Science Center was reassigned to the Ministry of National Security in September 2015. The center is located at numbers 17 to 19 Barbados Road, Federation Park, St. Clair. The role of the center is essentially to provide 1, forensic science services in the areas of biology, chemistry, document analysis, toxicology, and firearms, and 2, forensic pathology services, for example, postmortems, in support of law enforcement agencies involved in the investigation of crime. The center faces such challenges as inadequate staff complement, inadequate accommodation. In this context, efforts are being made, 1, to develop a state-of-the-art center on 5 acres of land at Carsonfield, and 2, to ensure institutional strengthening over time. One such area is the development of a DNA custodian unit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a little bit of housekeeping. When you speak, you can press the speak button in front of you so that what you say would be recorded, heard and recorded by Hansard, is present. And of course, members, the floor is now open for any questions you may wish to direct to those who are in front of us. Member?
Thank you. I would like to refer to the written submission that we received, looking at the response to Roman numeral 3, where we ask for information and statistics relating to cases that are waiting to be processed. Now, from the table submitted, it appears that this is a statement of the outstanding cases, cases that are waiting to be processed or in progress, and the status is at December 31st, 2015. What I would like to know is an indication of what percentage of the total cases that passes through the center is represented by these numbers. I mean, well, because if we just look at the numbers in isolation, then we don't, and we don't know the total number of cases that passes through the center, then we cannot get a sense of how efficient and effective the center operates. So from my understanding, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this simply appears to be a statement of essentially outstanding cases with no indication of the total number of cases that would have passed through the center. So if you could clarify so we can get an indication of what percentage of cases remain outstanding for an extended period. That would certainly be helpful in us ascertaining the efficiency and effectiveness of the center. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon. In relation to these statistics, like I mentioned, they were compiled by the last director, the present director who is on vacation leave. And in compiling the figures, I believe she was asked to give what was outstanding, and based on that, I believe this is how the response was. To give an insight as to the quantum and volume of work of the Forensic Science Center, last year in 2015, the Trinidad and Tobago Forensic Science Center received 3,105 cases. And in receipt of those 3,000 cases, there were 19,441 pieces of evidence submitted for examination. In the area of pathology, the center conducted 1,019 postmortems. To date, in normal casework submission, excluding pathology, the center has received 1,301 cases with 8,631 pieces of evidence. And in pathology, we have received, as of 31st of May, 473 postmortems have been conducted, which roughly works out to about, I would say, about 90 a month. And currently, this is only being handled by 2 active pathologists at the center at present. So it gives you an idea of what was received last year and to the current period. And I would add, in previous years, we have roughly approximated in that category of roughly 3,000 cases. So the figures outstanding gives an indication of what.
Would you please repeat those again with apologies?
Sure. In 2015, 3,105 cases, which would have comprised 19,441 pieces of evidence required for examination. To date, in that submission as well, we have received 1,301 cases. This is the 31st of May. And this includes 8,631 pieces of evidence. In the field of postmortems, I know the country normally looks at the murder rate and homicides every year, but we are deluded at the Forensic Science Center with other bodies that do not necessarily constitute the normal homicide type cases. But in 2015, the center conducted 1,019 postmortems. And as of the 31st of May, checked prior to coming here, we had received and conducted 473 pieces of evidence. I should mention here, and I think it's important, while these figures give an indication of the outstanding cases, in the area of pathology, with all the challenges the center has had, to the credit of the pathologists and the personnel at the center, all bodies, once they are submitted to the center, are worked on, and within a day or 2, sometimes maximum 3, depending on the workload of the pathologist, all autopsies are conducted within that time frame. And therefore, members of the public do not have to wait in too long periods of time to actually receive their bereaved ones and to deal with those types of situations.
Okay, well, thank you for that information, and certainly you must congratulate the pathology department for their efficient and effective operations. But well, if you could submit in writing, well, just the total numbers for these 4 categories that we would have previously requested, it will certainly help us get a better idea in terms of these specific ones, toxicology, ballistics.
And we will certainly do that.
Could I, on the back of the question by my colleague member, ask you please for the following information? 1, the number of cases which are pending before the assizes or magistracy, which are impacted by the outstanding statistics that you have provided for us. So whilst we recognize, if I may explain, 1,591 or 3,155 ballistic matters, I'd like to know how those are grounded in the criminal justice system, i.e. the particular cases that they're involved in. Secondly, I'd like to have the disposition ratio over time, for as far back as you can, perhaps a 5 to 6 year period or a 10-year period, whichever is convenient for you. What we'd like to have as well would be the work ratio from the human resource perspective to the work product perspective. So for instance, the DPP's department is a 1:80 ratio, whereas in Jamaica it may be 1:20 ratio. I'd like to be able to factor what the work ratio on the human resource factor looks like. If you could also provide us with an estimate for clearance of backlog. What is the specific requirement for the clearance of backlog in terms of physical resources, that is plant and machinery, or human resources? Could you also tell us what outsourcing arrangements the Forensics Institute engages in, specifically as it relates to ballistics or gun issues, insofar as armory, if you borrow the police term, may be involved, and specifically on DNA evidence as it relates to murder and sexual offenses? And if I could just disclose to you why we're interested in those specifics. As a committee, in making a recommendation to the Parliament, we'd like to be able to marry the solution with the problem. So we're inviting you to squeak so that the wheel which is squeaking can have the oil. So I don't want you to take the request as one which is an attack. It is intended to be one to ventilate, because this is a situation which has gripped our country for many years, not just last year or not for the last 5 years. What we would also like to have, please, would tie in terms of proposals for the criminal justice system, which is next on deck for public commentary, at least from the Attorney General's office. The Forensics Institute is an integral partner in the criminal justice system and requires efficiency if the criminal justice system is to work, because there are many cases that are impacted by the caseload that you manage, or more particularly, can't manage. Not don't manage, but can't manage. So that's at least from a written perspective, if you could provide us with further information. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable AG, what I would like, if possible, if you can give us a detailed listing of what you require, and I would be more than happy to try and have the information gathered. In one or two of the areas, like the correlation between the work of the center and what is in the court, there might be a little challenge for us, because once the request is made by the police, the cases are worked on by the Forensic Science Center, the report is given back to the police. Thereafter, what action is taken, whether the police level or DPP's level, we may not always be aware of that. But I will try to see how best we can make the correlation.
Then let me refine that request. You can provide us with the information to the police, if that's where your door stops.
Sure.
And the Secretariat to the committee will, of course, provide you with the requests that I have just itemized for you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I do appreciate it. And I do share your concerns with the rationale for the statistics. I do believe myself that the Forensic Science Center can and should be playing the most integral part in trying to reduce the crime situation in Trinidad and Tobago, especially as detection rates are concerned in the administration of justice. Like I said, I've only been here 2 weeks, and I will only be here for another 2 weeks. When I leave, the regular director who's on vacation will come back. I will try and coordinate with her, but in a lot of the areas, I do believe that we can make significant inroads in improving efficiency, but at the same time, we do have significant challenges, especially in the areas of storage and capacity and staffing, that we may have to look at, probably hopefully in conjunction with your office as well as that of the National Security Ministry itself. And I see present in this committee members have integrated with myself as a forensic expert in the past in the criminal courts and civil courts. So I understand fully, the need for the Forensic Science Center to really play its part for the betterment of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago.
Those of us who have worked with you in court, I speak for Mr. Ramada, Mr. Hines, and myself. I don't know if my other legal colleagues like Mr. Coppin have. Thank you for your dedicated work and for your response. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Parmisa, in relation to forensic pathologists, I overheard you say that there are only 2 on service now. I know that efforts had been made in the past to retain further numbers of forensic pathologists. Can you update us as to the progress there?
Okay, fortunately, we have the person from the Human Resource Department. What I would share with the committee is that the Trinidad and Tobago Forensic Science Center does not have the capacity to do our own hiring. So we have to go through the agencies of the ministry itself and institutions like the CPO and DPA's office. After she's enlightened as to the actual position, I could come back and answer the question which I know you're asking in terms of how we are coping with what is happening.
Good afternoon again. With regard to the positions of pathologists at the center, there are 4 positions, all contracted positions. Currently, 2 of those positions are filled. The remaining 2, an offer of employment we're in the process of offering employment to a 3rd individual. And with regard to the 4th position, the ministry will be taking steps shortly to re-advertise that position in attempts to fill that 4th and final vacancy.
Chair, with your leave, of course. No, we appreciate that these are highly specialized experts, and they're very short in number in terms of the world capacity. I know, sitting as a former minister with some responsibility for this, that sometimes you are handicapped by the length of time it would take to get the approval from other offices, and by which time those who had shown interest had moved on and had been basically taken elsewhere. Is there any suggestion you may want to put before this committee to allow us to in some way facilitate a speeding up of the process so that when you have a candidate at hand, you're able to capture them with a contract?
With regard to that, I agree that sometimes we do face challenges. On the last attempt where we had advertised the position of pathologist, not only is it the period of time it takes, because we do have to depend on central agencies like the CPO to determine terms and conditions of employment, but sometimes we are faced with other challenges. In the last recruitment exercise, we were faced with challenges of having security vetting done. Sometimes the persons that are identified, as you rightfully said, there's a dearth of that capability within Trinidad and Tobago. So when we do identify persons, sometimes they are from abroad. You have to go through the whole security vetting process, which in itself sometimes we face challenges in terms of the period of time, as well as in order for a foreigner to operate as a pathologist in Trinidad, we need to get the relevant, we need to have their qualifications looked at by the Medical Board of Trinidad and Tobago to verify that the persons and the qualifications and experiences that they're coming with, that they will be allowed to be registered with the Medical Board to perform as a pathologist in Trinidad and Tobago. And even with that, there are challenges because the Medical Board, on the last instance that we had written to them requesting for them to look at some academic documents that were submitted to us by potential candidates, even they had indicated to us that they were not in a position yet because they had some challenges of their own in getting some sort of approval from the Ministry of Health. So even with regard to that, we have several challenges. So I agree, sometimes you do find persons, but the length of time to sort out all the background and support and things to go with it can create challenges that frustrates the process. In terms of what suggestions we may have, one of the things that the ministry did look at was trying to get our locals trained in the area, and with regard to that, we have partnered with the Scholarships and Advanced Training Division, where approval was granted for the issue of 6 scholarships in the area of forensic pathology. So we are working with the Scholarships and Advanced Training Division. Thus far, based on feedback from that division, they have interviewed 2 potential candidates for scholarships in the forensic pathology area. We are currently doing the security vetting aspect of that. Once we get the results of that, the information will be passed back to the Scholarships and Advanced Training Division so that possibly those persons can be awarded scholarships. So it is a method, it is a strategy that we're using to try to get some of our locals trained in the area so that we can fill some of our vacancies within.
Yes.
On the human resource point.
Could I follow up to that question as well? I believe there could be some insight. I do have a suggestion. I think that with the benefit of the committee might be worth sharing. The position of always being in shortages in different fields for the Forensic Science Center goes back a long time. I think even when you were practicing, I remember you making suggestions when I was the only document expert at the time dealing with those issues. Here's something, and I've only been in this position for a short period, and I've started to look at those very issues. Since we can remember, Trinidad and Tobago has always been in a problem where pathologists are an issue. Here are the facts. The profession of pathology is a subdivision of medicine. It is not a subdivision of forensic science. What does that mean? If we can take the position where forensic science as it is deals with the true law enforcement aspect, document examination, firearms identification, DNA analysis, and take the forensic pathology back to where it belongs, in the realm of medicine. What does that mean? It means it really should be under the Ministry of Health. And I said this is the forum for it because I don't know when next or how we will get the opportunity to deal with really proactive solutions to solving issues in Trinidad and Tobago. This is one area. In the United States and other jurisdictions, pathology is handled by a coroner's office. That's the Ministry of Health. Here's what happens if you look at the statistics. We received 1,019 requests and conducted 1,019 postmortems in 2015. The homicide rate in Trinidad hovers around 450 to 500. That means, and again, this is only within short time I've been here, the Trinidad and Tobago Forensic Science Center is doing approximately more than 500 autopsies or postmortems that does not necessarily have to be conducted by a pathologist. That, taken as it is, therefore, means, therefore, if we could put it under the ambit of the Ministry of Health. Okay, I looked at an org chart from the previous director this morning. She was present in the meeting. And I remember at one time we had Dr. Chandulal, who was the chief forensic pathologist. We do not have that anymore. So right now, the pathologists report to me as deputy director in my substantive dealings with them. I am not a medically qualified individual, but I am supervising pathologists. Granted, without saying too much, I mean, I've developed a really good working relationship with the present individuals, and I've been quite cooperative in handling almost everything that we've tried to work together despite constraints. But here is what it could do for Trinidad and Tobago if we make this switch at the strategic and tactical level. If you move it to the Ministry of Health, you will get a situation where house officers, registers, could come and work on those bodies. And therefore, the resources of the pathologists could be diverted elsewhere. A pathologist by international standards should only be working on an average about 250 bodies per year. Okay? So,
And I would suggest that you put a position paper, if you like, and submit it to us. We'd be very happy to give serious contemplation to this. And I urge you so to do.
I'm very happy to hear that because I believe it's one of the things that could make the service better. And it will also give the opportunities to new people to gravitate the field while
certainly. Mr. Coppin, you had a question?
It's slightly answered by what Mr. Pambusa was saying. It related to the international best practice as it relates to the number of pathologists per cases, for instance. But in any event, given that you have already stated, I think it's 250, I probably just want to move on to another question. In your written submission, there's an astronomical increase in the number of cases waiting to be processed in the fields of narcotics and toxicology in particular, as well as homicide. Could you give us an indication as to why that is, with such an astronomical increase between the years 2014 and 2015?
What has happened with the forensic?
Please permit me. The public who is listening to us are not in possession of the document that is in front of us. So let me, for the purpose of elucidation, say to those who are listening and watching, the question from this committee to the department was that they provide this committee with information and statistics relating to cases that are waiting to be processed at the Trinidad and Tobago Forensic Science Center as of December 2015 in each of the following cases: 1, narcotics; 2, homicide; 3, ballistics; and 4, toxicology. Now, in answer to that, you produced a table with 6 columns. Type of case, the 4 that we identified: narcotics, homicide, ballistics, and technology, and toxicology. The next column is headed number of cases submitted prior to 2013. The next column is headed number of 2013 cases, that is within the year 2013, then 2014, then 2015, and the final column, column 6, deals with total number of cases. And I would like, therefore, if you would explain, one of you, what does this column, these columns, what does it say? Explain it, because it is a little complicated as presented. And then you will tackle the question of Mr. Coppin, Senator Coppin.
Members of the committee, I'm Derek Sanka.
Yes.
I will attempt to explain the table, even though I am not the author of the table. The narcotics cases, in the second column, we have number of cases submitted prior to 2013. That number is 22. That represents the backlog of cases that we received before 2013 that are yet to be processed.
Narcotics cases?
Narcotics, we are dealing with the narcotics cases. The number of cases we received in 2013 itself that are yet to be processed is 7. In 2014, there are 17 cases. And the number of cases in 2015 that are received and not processed as yet, as of December 31st, 2015, 715, which gives a total of 761 cases yet to be processed as of December 31st, 2015. The number in brackets 292 indicates that what was processed for the first 2 months in 2016, because the letter or the response is dated March. So the director gave the 292 representing of the 761, 292 were processed as of the end of February.
Pause. Now, these numbers, outstanding cases, 7 in 2013, 17 in 2014, and in 2015, 715. They are startling to me, especially when I hear, and I'm to some extent personally familiar with the fact that some of the narcotic cases that come to your department for analysis when the police arrests and charge someone, they plead not guilty, it comes to you for analysis to prove that it is a narcotic. In some cases, the reports are, and I have personal knowledge of it as I said, some cases they take 2 and 3 years. So with these very slim figures, it is very hard to cognize, to balance this. Please explain.
I know from my experience, when there are priority cases, and one of the priority we consider, well, very important to us, are cases where the person pleaded guilty and seek immediate justice. A decision by the court is requested and it is transmitted to the police officer who submitted the case. And we most times oblige and process that case ahead of other cases. And the normal cases that take 2 to 3 years are cases that are in the traditional backlog. And we prioritize. If you notice, on 2013, we have only 7. So we start the backlog from the earlier years, come up to the present. That is the usual trend at the Forensic Center.
Perhaps I think it might be necessary to clarify. I mean, that's 7 in 2013. It's not a total of 7 cases that was sent to the
No.
center.
That is 7 that is outstanding.
outstanding.
So we have processed the rest.
Yes, so I just wanted to clarify.
If you process the rest, why are we having cases taking? Explain if you process all of the rest and only 7 and 17.
For 2013, yes.
Yeah. In the last 5 years, why do we have this large backlog and some cases not coming before the court? Some certificates of analysis not getting there until 3 years later? That's what I would like you to tell the public.
In areas such as ballistics, we have a backlog of narcotics.
I'm talking about narcotics. There are people who are, one of the big problems we have in here now is the length of time matters are taking to be disposed of in the courts. This is causing all kind of adverse feedback in the remand yard and all of that. So the public is concerned that the administration of justice, particularly in the criminal area, is taking too long. And when you get into it, one of the reasons why it's taking too long is because the narcotic takes 2 years to be analyzed and certified as a narcotic. Am I correct, Mr. Ramada? Yeah? And if your record to this committee is that you only have 7 and 17 outstanding, it is incredulous. I don't understand it. I would like you to explain, not to me alone, but to the public, in the face of the threat and the problem I've just described. How could you be so efficient?
What I know is that we had acquired the services of two contracted positions, 2 analysts, and they have assisted in processing the cases at a faster rate.
In which case, then, it is safe for us to tell the country, this committee, that the backlog thing finished, and that when a matter comes into your department for analysis, a narcotic matter at any rate, within that very year, it will be back certified in the court. Can I safely tell that to the public?
I would say yes, sir.
Yes.
Because we have been treating with the narcotic cases at a rapid pace.
I just want to remind you, though, that whatever you say here will be taken down in writing.
And I'm specific to the narcotic cases.
Yes. Let us go on to ballistics now.
Yes. Again, the ballistic, the figures there, 1,591, represent cases yet to be processed prior to 2013. The number of cases for 2013 yet to be processed, 453, 2014, 507, 2015, 604. The total number of cases yet to be processed, or the backlog in ballistics, is 3,155 cases. So we have.
Why is that so?
Sorry, I was asking whether there is any overlap in those cases. So in the same way a sexual offense might relate to one matter but be 14, I was wondering what the incidence of overlap look like in those, or are they standalone?
They are separate cases. And the cases we receive are homicide cases, wounding cases, and other cases where we require microscopy.
Is the type of ballistics, sorry to intrude, is the type of ballistics simply a request that this gun, that this is actually, first of all, ammunition within the definition of the Firearms Act, or secondly, that it is this, is it in relation to the gun itself or the bullet itself? Is it also involving a matchup between the two if a weapon has been found?
Okay, prior to 2013, we had a large number of possession cases, possession of firearm and ammunition, which refers to the gun itself, cartridge casings, bullets. So once you're found in possession, then the charge of possession, we conduct an exercise, what is called firearm identification. That constituted a large number of the cases. For example, in 2011, we had 482 possession cases by itself. In addition, we receive cases that require microscopy, which uses the comparison microscope, which involves homicide, wounding cases, as well as other cases involving the use of microscopes. So, for example, in 2011, we had 1,068 cases received by the section. An arrangement was made for the police armory to channel or to take all the possession cases away from us, which constitute about 50% of our cases, our workload. As a result, compared to 1,068 in 2011, we now receive 590 cases in 2013, 548 in 2014, 640 cases in 2015. And those are
for microscopy.
For microscopy.
Right. And the armory cases, if just to get the clarification.
The possession cases.
Right.
Then.
The armory police involvement is simply for identification that this thing is a gun stroke firearm within the definition of the law.
Yes, sir.
Yes? Because a complaint coming from the judiciary is that a number of the matters in the judiciary are stalled simply because of somebody looking at what appears to be a firearm is not able to certify that it is a firearm. Have you any idea whether the uptick, because as recently as just a couple of weeks ago, we had not seen the uptick flow to the court. Has there been any uptick or improvement as a result of the police armory being involved?
What I heard from the police armorer and from police officers who come to the Forensic Science Center is that the police armorer, he now has a backlog. And as he is the only reporting officer, I stand to be corrected on that. And he has been indicating to police officers to wait their turn because he in turn has a backlog with the possession cases.
And if I could just ask, it is therefore a matter of the Commissioner of Police simply, well, not simply, is it a matter for the Commissioner of Police to have more armorers appointed?
It would seem so. Yes.
Thank you. If I may ask a question that would really seek to look at the systems you have in place for conducting these. When I compare the rate of cases that are completed, I'm just looking at the numbers and brackets across the 4 categories. I see under narcotics, you have 292 cases completed in the first 2 months of the year. But then when you look at ballistics, there are just 8 cases completed. So I'm trying to ascertain, well, in terms of the different types of cases that you have to work with, do you have adequate staff working in each of these different sections? Is there a different time period that the particular testing takes, which would indicate why certain types of cases are done more frequently than others? Because as you would have indicated, based on the changes, the number of ballistic cases has drastically reduced.
No,
you indicated
narcotics.
No, the number of ballistic cases would have reduced from prior to 2013. You indicated that the number of cases you received in 2013 was about 519, yet 453 remain outstanding. In 2015, you got about 604 cases, yet 614 cases, yet 604 remain outstanding. So it seems that the ballistic cases really have the lowest rate of completion. So is that a systemic problem? Is it that you have less staff working in this area? How would you explain that?
We have a contingent of 5 staff members or 5 scientific officers in the firearms ballistic unit. 1 acting scientific officer, 3 myself, and 4 scientific officer 1s. We have inherited a backlog from the possession cases from 2011-10 and 2012, in addition to our current cases that we receive. We are trying to mix the 2011, 12, and 13 cases are now in the court. We are obtaining a lot of requests via summons, via police officers asking for the cases, via magistrates asking for the reports for these cases to be presented. Because they want to get the matter on, and a lot of objections are made. The delay is too long. So we are prioritizing our cases to satisfy the courts, so that we will process some of the 2011, 2012 cases as the demand is made for it. And we are also trying to cut down on the 2013, 14, and 15 cases. In answer to whether we need more staff, we do need a lot more staff to process these cases.
But I mean, I'm looking at the low number that have been processed
Right,
in
for
the
the-
first 2 months, right? I'm just 8. So I'm just trying to understand.
That is 8 represents 8 cases from 2013, 2014, 2015 that we have taken up and had processed. The majority of the other cases we have done for the month would have been from the prior to 2013.
Question on behalf of the public again here. You said you might need more staff, or you need more staff. Let me ask a straight, hard question. Does the staff who are there now work 8 to 4? Or they come to work 10 o'clock, do 1 or 2, and then cruise home at 4 o'clock? I mean, in a serious way, you know. Let me tell you something. Productivity is an issue. Everybody in this country knows that. We're here talking beautifully, you know. And we need more staff. The question is, have we or are we maximizing the use of the resources, including human resources, that we now have? Because if you have 5, but they come to work 10 o'clock, there's no supervision, nobody to talk to them, they come to work 10 o'clock, they saunter off 11:30 and come back 2, and then leave 3:30, we have a problem. So I'm asking, do we work conscientiously in there and give our day for our pay?
Well, there's room for improvement in every section.
I thank you. Now, let me ask another question. I think Senator Arawi, I keep saying my colleague. Yes.
I earned my seat.
My colleague. Remember, but see, when we
have to fight to keep
when
it
we
as
first
well.
fought together, we were senators and so on. And yes, I'm stuck in that. My apologies. But the question is, and he raised it a while ago. What do you call it? Microscopy?
Microscopy.
I understand that to mean the capacity to match a spent shell or projectile, the part that leaves the shell and does the damage on the target, to match it to the weapon that discharged it. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
We are doing that here?
Yes, sir. We have 2 comparison microscopes.
So every time that a weapon comes to you, you have now on record the foot or the fingerprint, the microscopy is recorded, so you can know when a body shows up with a bullet stuck in it, you can know which gun generally it would have come from if you already had that registered in your database. Am I correct?
Yes, the database does a cross-reference with previously taken...
in this high season of murders, homicides, where the use of firearms are so prevalent, as the Commissioner of Police tells us and as we observe, how is it our detection rate is so low and you are performing such an useful service out of the Forensic Science Center? How is it? Why aren't the people of Trinidad and Tobago getting the satisfaction of knowing that we use that technology and solve most of those homicides?
Well, every year the casework that comes into the forensic lab, all the guns that are tested, all the bullets that are submitted to the forensic lab, all are scanned and photographed and stored on the database. We have police firearms are also submitted, firearms from the Army, the normal traditional firearms that are taken off the streets. All test fires are sent to the IBIS section where the bullets are scanned and the images are stored for cross-reference. And the IBIS section presents a report quarterly and annually as to how many hits or how many cross-references were successful.
Great.
With a bullet that was submitted or a gun that was submitted. How many previous times the same gun was used. Those bullets are then taken back out of the collection, and we, the scientific officers, with the expertise, place them back on the microscope, and then we do a comparison to confirm whether the instrument, the machine, is really saying the truth. And when we confirm that, we present a report to the police investigating officer, the relevant investigating officer, who takes it from there. And so whether he wants to link up the case and do further investigation. So it is a very useful tool.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Coppin.
Earlier in the presentation, there was a distinction made between number of cases and evidence, pieces of evidence being examined. My question is, because this table deals specifically with cases being or waiting to be processed, could you also give me an indication perhaps as to the pieces of evidence waiting to be processed as well?
Okay. I do not have those figures, the unprocessed exhibits, the numbers themselves. I just have the number of cases.
Could you undertake perhaps to provide that information to the committee as well?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
If I may ask a follow-up on your previous response, when you're ready. Yes, well, you outline in the instance of the ballistics, the comparison, which would identify if the item that is being tested it matches a specimen that you have previously seen. What I would be interested to know is in what percentage of the time do you actually have a match?
The instrument itself, when we do a search, cross-references any possible match. The present test from the present gun has with what is stored in the database. And if we have 5 possibilities, we take the actual cartridge casings or the bullets and match them on the comparison microscope. Sometimes it is not to my satisfaction that it is a match. It is similar, but there isn't sufficient reproducible markings to say it is a match. But most times the instrument is fairly correct. And we do get a satisfactory comparison. I cannot answer on what percentage, other than that the times that it does have a hit, as we call it, we look at the evidence and we determine whether it is to our satisfaction, it is a match, and then we present a report.
Okay, well, the reason I asked the question is because it will only have a potential hit if it is a weapon that you would have come into contact with, which you would have stored in your database. So I'm really trying to ascertain if that is the norm or if that is the exception. Is it that most of the cases that you are examining, you do not get a hit because this would be new weapons that would have not passed through?
Sometimes you have trends where there are periods of times when you have a lot of hits, that the firearm that was submitted was related to 5 shootings, 6 shootings, 10 shootings. And sometimes it is possible 1 shooting it was related to, depends on the age of the firearm, if it was rented out. The circumstances vary.
Question of the DNA. We asked you, how effective are your processes for collection, use, and effectiveness of forensic sampling and the use of DNA in criminal investigations? We have asked you to identify areas and procedures which would more effectively utilize forensic sampling and improve investigation and the detection of crime. You responded to us at page 1, and you told us that you use DNA and forensic sampling to assist criminal investigations by linking the identity of persons to crime scenes, linking crime scenes to persons, linking physical evidence to crime scenes, confirming scientific location of crime, longitude and latitude, Once DNA results are provided, it is usually very useful in the courts of Trinidad and Tobago. Now, Joe Blogg from Trinidad and Tobago or John Brown, the visitor, based on what we see on the television, in real life documentaries, I ain't talking about movies now, we have come to expect that you can find a sample or a stain on a crime scene and should easily be able to link that to some individual, some bit of his hair, some bit of his skin tissue under the woman who was raped and murdered under her nail, some fingerprint having squeezed on the neck for strangulation, and a host of other things. We expect that our Forensic Science Center, efficient as you tell us it is, would assist in the detection of crimes. But yet we are plagued with low detection in Trinidad and Tobago. I would like you to tell the country, the public, and this committee more directly, how do you do these things, this linking, and how successful you are of the identities of persons to crime scenes and all of that, and particularly, how expansive now is this DNA data bank that the law provides that you should keep? And how comfortable we are to feel that you will make a hit when the occasion arises? Pray, tell us.
Yes, Honourable Member.
Before you go, we are quite prepared to stay with you until 11 p.m. tonight. If you want to leave earlier, be as cryptic and swift as you can be.
I will try.
Yes.
Yeah. The question was asked, like I said, we were not privy to the response to the items. It's only once we were informed that we had to appear before you all, we tried our best to collect the information. In terms of the process of collection, use, and effectiveness of forensic sampling, the process of the collection of the evidence is actually not done by the Trinidad and Tobago Forensic Science Center. It is actually done by crime scene investigators and or the police. It is only when the samples are brought to the Forensic Science Center, at that stage does the Forensic Science
Let
Center...
me ask a question. Best practice international. In other jurisdictions, in the US, in Canada, in England, in Australia, is that so? Is that dichotomy real? Or is it that the crime scene investigators are attached to the Forensic Science Department?
It depends on the jurisdiction. In some labs, crime scene officers are part and parcel of the forensic
And in
unit.
others, they belong to the police service
They would
and
come
they
from the
submit
police.
samples for testing.
Right.
So what is happening here is not strange or unique or
Right.
improper.
Yeah, historically in Trinidad, collection of evidence has come from the police. The Forensic Science Center over time has not been the one responsible for the collection of the evidence.
Sorry, I missed that.
I said over time, historically in Trinidad and Tobago, it was the police who was responsible for the collection of the evidence.
Yes.
And then submitted it. With the advent of SORT and the training of crime scene officers, they have added a specialty of crime scene trained people to collect that evidence.
So these people are the ones we see in the white suits?
Yes, they do not belong to
With
the
the
forensic...
fancy shoes?
Yes, they do not belong to the Forensic Science Center.
Which unit they belong to? The police service?
From the police service, as far as I am aware.
Well, then it's that, right? It's that. So they do it from the police service, but they are specially trained.
Yes.
And I'm asking you, the fact that these crime scene investigators are with the police service and not the Forensic Science Center is not a bar. It's not a problem because it happens other parts of the world too.
Correct, yes.
Okay, so proceed. I don't see that as a problem.
Right. So the Forensic Science Center gets into the system once the samples are submitted. In the question that was asked in terms of the usefulness of DNA in linking persons to a crime scene, once the samples are analyzed, they could belong either to the victim, a suspect, sometimes even a witness, depending on how investigations are conducted. Once the report is generated, it goes back to the police, and it's the police who handles that aspect of it thereafter.
Yeah, but I'm asking, you told us that you assist in creating these linkages, identifying persons to crime scenes. In other words, if on a crime scene, you get a sample, a stain, you have that in your database. No. A woman is raped. That's what you aren't saying for me?
No,
a woman is raped, for an example. A swab is taken, so semen is found. but they haven't found the attacker just yet. So you have that.
Yes,
one day, 10 years later, the attacker is arrested and a sample is had from him one way or the next, voluntary or otherwise. When you get that, you ought to be able to tell us this is likely the individual who did the rape 10 years ago. That's what I'm talking about.
Yes, you can do that. Once you've identified the DNA profile of the individual and a suspect is later obtained at
So let me ask a question. Do you find in your experience at your center that you get stains, samples from many or most crime scenes or not?
Again,
that the police bring for you?
Right. Again, the samples will come from the police. In the majority of cases that are submitted by the police, it is because they've obtained either swabs or clothing samples from the crime scene, whether it comes from the victim or the suspect, and that is what is analyzed at the Forensic Science Center.
Yeah, I'm asking you a question. I'm asking, do you find from the statistics and from your practice that
if we get a match, yes, you do get matches, if I understand what you're asking.
Not so much matches, It's not only matches I'm talking about. Do we, when there's a crime, for the most part, all the crime scenes, do we get a regular stash of samples coming from the police service from the crime scenes? Stains?
Yes.
Huh? To put in your bank? Or do you, from where you sit, consider that the police crime scene investigators are not getting enough samples from the crime scene to bring to you to put in the bank? That's what I'm asking.
Mr. Chairman, just to interject. I refer you to page 3, the table at the top, where we had the narcotics cases, homicide cases, ballistic cases. Yes. The table has on it, the second column there, homicide. Yes. And it was clarified prior to this that the homicide really refers to homicide cases where it requires DNA to be done, or DNA analysis to be done. And the number of homicide cases where DNA analysis is required to be done is 2,338, which specifically refers to samples from homicides that are awaiting DNA analysis. The cases are taken, they are profiled using the DNA methodology, and they are stored in the file. That information is kept, and we, pursuant to the DNA Act, where a system of a custodian has to be established, and the custodian will manage the DNA database. We are building on our information and are waiting for the custodian to be established, and we will hand that information over to the custodian to manage the profiles of all these.
So let me ask you a question. It is not in all cases of homicide that DNA sampling or testing and analysis is necessary?
To me, it will depend on the circumstances of the case and the training that the officer will receive and the instructions that the crime scene investigators are given.
So let me put it differently. There are some cases of homicide in which no DNA testing or application is done?
With the development where we require a database and profiling to be done, we are almost profiling every single homicide, so that we will use that opportunity, that sample, to increase our database.
Sir, let me ask again. In your response earlier, a minute ago, you pointed out that in the table that I went through earlier, these are homicides in which DNA sampling is necessary or is awaited. Remember saying that?
Yes, sir.
Good. It is on that basis that I recognize that there are some homicides where DNA application is not necessary and therefore not listed here. Am I correct?
It may be so. I am not the author of the document.
Well, I don't want no may. I want to know. Just hold on, please. I want to know.
I am uncertain if there are any cases where DNA is not required in a homicide.
But you said that earlier. So, I too am uncertain as a result.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chairman,
yes,
that is an area that perhaps we'd have to clarify with the police, because right now we get the samples from the police and they are stored at the Forensic Science Center with, of course, the intention that once the database is created, we could populate the database with the information that we've kept on file. So at this point in time, I don't think we could say whether the police will bring to us samples from every crime scene. So some of that I'm certain we would need to clarify with the police, because
there is no difference between Forensic Science Center and police. The problem that the country is having is that murders are being committed and people are not being caught. And that we have a Forensic Science Center governed by the law of Trinidad and Tobago, and every officer therein is getting paid on a monthly basis, and the public is not getting service that we have grown to expect and to admire by our watching real movies, real documentaries and events and statistics in other countries. That's the problem. And therefore, if there's any shortcoming in the police service that is adversely affecting what you ought to do under law, that's something the public wants to know you are collaborating on a daily basis to resolve. I am not comfortable to hear nothing else. You follow? And therefore, if it is that there's any, because you did say, just one moment please, counsel, colleague, you did say that you have challenges. Let me list them for those who don't have this document, the public. The need for timely processing of exhibits from collection to analysis. That's one of the challenges you say you have. The absence of real-time systems for officers to check on the status of their exhibits at the police station. Improved databases needed. Imagine you saying improved databases needed, but that's your responsibility under law. And for the absence of DNA data bank locally so that samples can be processed. A DNA data bank is within the mandate. Your legal responsibility is yours. So when you tell me about this is a challenge and a problem, without more, I can't understand that. What you should be telling me or telling your line minister or telling somebody is what you need in order to fix it. And then finally, the need for continuous training of persons involved in the collection and preservation procedures of evidence. Now, if you discover anything as you do your work that is the result of police shortcomings, Mr. PS, then it is obligatory on your part to immediately collaborate with the police to resolve the problems in my interest. And I am bleeding, I am being murdered, I am being killed, you are being paid, and we all go merrily along. Mr. Ramadan.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think it would be quite helpful, PS, if you could update us on the status of the acquisition of a custodian for the forensic data bank. Because I'm hearing a subtext that we do not have an effective data bank, and one could understand if we have not developed yet the data bank with a custodian. So if you could give us an update on that, I think that would be quite enlightening.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Before I hand over to the colleague there to give some more details, I want to agree with the chairman, and I simply want to add that the challenges have been recognized. The ministry, we've been meeting on these aspects of the Forensic Science Center in the last few weeks, looking at the challenges and coming up with some ways in which we need to implement a number of changes and so on at the center to improve the effectiveness of the Forensic Science Center. The data bank, the database is one of the areas that we've looked at, and my colleague here will give some details in our efforts to have that going.
Right. Good day. Now, in relation to the establishment of the custodian unit, there are certain activities that the Ministry of National Security has been engaged in. One of them is the recruitment of a custodian and a deputy custodian. The HR department of the ministry has undergone a recruitment process and has identified persons to fill those positions, and they are foreign nationals to come in and fill the custodian and deputy custodian positions. And those matters were referred to the CPO for development of terms and conditions. So we cannot make an offer to the foreign nationals until we have settled the matter of the terms and conditions for their employment. So that matter is currently before the CPO.
Let me say this one time. This act that governs your operation was born in 2012. Am I correct?
Right, amended in 2014.
This is 2016. CPO, terms and conditions. Let me tell you where you could start, right? Let me tell you where you all could start. The law governing the DNA in Trinidad and Tobago is found in the Administration of Justice Deoxyribonucleic Acid Act, Chapter 534. Yes. Right? Now, let me just tell you a couple things about this. You have defined therein intimate sample and non-intimate sample, as you know well.
Yes.
An intimate sample is defined as a specimen of biological or other material taken from any part of a person's genitals or a person's bodily orifice, meaning opening, other than the mouth. A non-intimate sample is defined as a specimen of blood obtained by a prick on the finger. There's a little instrument where they could take a little sample, very painless.
Yes.
And epithelial cells obtained by means of a buccal swab, where they have a particular instrument with a little cotton where they pass it in your mouth to get some of the cells in the back there by the jaw. And these are all non-intimate samples. A little bit of hair or saliva, right? Now, the law says at Section 13, it outlines the circumstances in which a police officer, or a qualified person, like a medical practitioner, persons qualified under the law, shall take a non-intimate sample from a person without the person's consent. These circumstances include A, where the person is a suspect, detainee, or accused. B, where a stain derived from a crime scene exists and there are reasonable grounds for suspecting that the person was involved in the offense and for believing that forensic DNA analysis could confirm or disprove such suspicion. C, the person has had a non-intimate sample taken, and that sample has proved to be either unsuitable or insufficient for DNA analysis, is lost or destroyed, or cannot be used for any other reason. And D, the person is not a victim of an offense, attends a crime scene, and is required by the investigating officer to give a non-intimate sample. That, of course, is to rule out that person from possible allegations or being looked on with suspicion. So that crime scene investigators, for example, they will give a sample. So it will be in the data bank, so you will know definitely that that is not the person who committed the crime, because they interfere with crime scenes. Now, we know what the definition of the qualified person is. You know, the point I'm making is, the law says as well, in Schedule 3, there are a number of listed persons coming out of Section 15 of the Act. And it says that non-intimate DNA samples to be taken without the consent of listed persons. So all these persons who I will now list could give you a non-intimate sample, either from the hair, saliva, a buccal swab, or a little prick on the finger to take a soil sample of blood. Here are these persons. An officer of the protective services, any one of them, police, soldier, coast guard, reservists, a member of the municipal police service, all of them from all the 14 regional corporations around the country, a member of the SRP, Special Reserve Police, a constable within the meaning of the Supplemental Police Act, meaning any estate constable who is precepted. And in all these cases, I'm being reminded, shall be taken, that the law permits you to take that. So you should have this DNA base that you're telling me now you don't have. Any member of the Defense Force, customs officer of the Customs and Excise Division, any private security officer, of which there are thousands in this country, some of them even committing crime, holding up the employer, killing the employer, all these things happening here. And the person who is employed or assigned to duties at the Trinidad and Tobago Forensic Science Center, every one of you, except the PSs, are you all making use of these provisions of the Act and getting these people in the database using non-intimate samples? That's the question. And if the answer is no, there's a very good place for us to start. Forgive me for sounding a little bit exasperated, but you see, the public is bleeding and crying while we talk.
Yes, Chairman. In terms of the collection of samples, the Center has actively been engaging in the collection of samples. These have come primarily from almost all the cases that the Center has been working on. So that's the first stage in actually collection of samples. In terms of the data bank, however, that function is independent of the Forensic Science Center. And the Center, once the bank is operational, then the Center will be feeding into.
Do you know whether the bank is operational?
As far as I am aware, I don't think it is.
Okay, good. Thank you. I have nothing else to ask.
Chairman, if I may, if I may, I think it's about high time that we get rid of the bureaucratic stranglehold on this nation. Speaking from my experience in being in government, and you certainly would have experienced it yourself, and will continue to experience it unless we do something very differently. For too long, we've been hearing these excuses, and I mean no disrespect to anyone, because they are confined within the rules and regulations of the CPO not providing contracts, and without that, nothing could go forward. I think it is, ripe for us to invite the CPO here, because they must have a level of priority in terms of, we appreciate the workload that the CPO office deals with. But when it comes to national security issues and the lack of the capacity for the data bank, because what I'm hearing, Chair, and gentlemen, you may tell me, and ladies, if I'm wrong, is that they have not been able to institutionalize the data bank, for notwithstanding the ability to collect samples, to have anything to test it against. And that is where everything is falling apart. And if it is just for the want of contract provision to get the expertise to put this office in place, then I think we have done a tremendous disservice to this nation. And under your chairmanship, I think it is, our duty here to forcefully and manfully deal with this issue here and now.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you, Mr. Paul. Thank you.
Hi, as far as you're aware, for any member of the panel, are there circumstances that require the TTPS to send samples abroad for DNA testing?
Yes, in the past, in high-profile cases, the police has actually sent samples abroad for DNA testing to expedite some of those matters. In the recent past, I have not seen any instance where they have actually done so. The center continues to actually perform the DNA analysis on the samples that they have requested thus far.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I'm aware that I seem to recall that in the Dana Sitahal, may her soul rest in perfect peace, matter, they sought, yes, they sought international support in that. I seem to recall. Am I correct? Yes. Yes. As I'm passing, the law as well permits that samples, non-intimate samples, could be had from certain categories of prisoners. You must be familiar with this, you operate in the Act. Is that happening?
I am not sure if that is actually happening at that stage. I don't have that information. I could find out and relay back to you.
Well, I have exhausted my questions and comments this afternoon. Members, any?
Forgive me, but I want a little clarity on this because it is huge in its absence. Tell me if I'm wrong, Permanent Secretary and others, that it is because of the non-implementation of the custodian of forensic DNA data bank that we're having this problem that you may collect samples, but you have nothing to compare it with, and that therefore, if we should deal with the issue of the appointment of a custodian and create that data bank, then we'll be able to do the many things that the chairman has so spoken about, to be able to solve crime and bring persons to justice. Am I hearing that right?
Yes. Collection of DNA samples, collection of samples and analysis for DNA, we try to develop the population database and the DNA data bank profiles. The DNA data bank profiles will be the general profiling database where you put an unknown against knowns, simple like what we do in fingerprints with the ballistics section. And the computer matches or cross matches and you get a hit or not. So that it is very important that the profiles that we generate at the Forensic Science Center are used or put to use for something. Because when you go to court, you have to say, this person's profile is 1 in 500,000. And how do you say that as an expert? You have to refer to that database, which we are yet to generate. So the custodians are the ones who will set the guidelines, how to take the profiles from the Forensic Center, put it in the computer in the format that is required, and then that tool is now used by the same expert in court to give an interpretation to the jury as to what the profile that they have before them in the case that they worked is against the population. So that is critical for DNA to be effective.
Am I right in saying then it is of the highest priority for Forensic Science Center to have this matter dealt with?
As the chair has said, this act has been here from 2012 and this is 2016. 4 years have gone and it is time that this tool that is so useful in a lot of cases be now put be of use in the courts.
National security. All of this falls under your administrative purview, sir. Whether it is the Forensic Science Center or the DNA data bank and custodian and all of that, I must tell you that before us today is a pretty poor picture. It's a pretty poor picture. Doesn't give the people of Trinidad and Tobago too much comfort nor hope while we are being slaughtered. Obviously, we have to meet again soon. In the meantime, I would like you, Mr. Permanent Secretary, to do all things that are lawfully necessary. In fact, Mr. Permanent Secretaries and Madam Permanent Secretary, and apply your minds and the resources you have to the problems that we have identified this afternoon and the paucity of Trinidad and Tobago's response through your ministry to it. We will have to meet again soon. And I hope that when we meet again soon, you will be able to tell us more definitively and to inspire greater confidence in us what action that is being taken, what action you all propose to take to pull all these disparate strands together. Because if you don't, we would all have received our monthly salaries in vain. And we'll continue to be slaughtered with no response. We have the law, we have all kinds of resources, we have only experts sitting in front of us in everything. So we promise you that you will be before us again. But in the meantime, please be able to tell us what action, Mr. Permanent Secretary and Madam Deputy, that you have taken from the Ministry of National Security to start to pull this thing together. Because you, Permanent Secretary, would have heard everything that we heard shockingly here today. For my part, I could hardly sleep comfortably in my Trinidad and Tobago bed knowing that this is so. I consider that my job is about solving problems, fixing problems. This committee's work is about identifying softness in policy and practice and making recommendations to the Parliament for its improvement. We're starting today. Thank you all very much, Mr. Chair.
Chair, before you do proceed, I think it was an excellent observation you've made, and I think it would be quite useful if the Permanent Secretary could write to our Secretary of your committee, indicating all the different stakeholders that are required to make this thing happen, and to a future date to invite them all into one room. We found that to be an extremely effective means of getting things done rather than letters going back and forth for months on end. Things that could be resolved in a day will take these months, so that under your guidance, if we could get that information and bring all those parties together under your chairmanship here, and let's make this thing really happen. I'm lifted by your words that the change starts here today.
Yes, you've heard the submission of my colleague.
Yes, sir, I've heard.
So I would like you, in addition to what I've said, to identify all of the necessary stakeholders who will come together based on your assessment of what we suggested to make it happen. So when we meet again, we will all meet under this roof.
Yes.
In camera, to begin or to continue that which is obviously and sorely necessary to make this institution of national security and the Forensic Science Center and the DNA administration helpful. Thank you very much. Is there any closing comments to come from you, Mr. Pierce? Are there, sorry, forgive my bad grammar, are there any comments from you as we close?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Joint Select Committee. I really just want to assure you, as I started saying a bit earlier, that we are not at variance with your position, Honorable Chairman. Some of us at the executive level of the Ministry of National Security are quite new. I've been there for just a few weeks now, and it is not knocking those persons who might have been there before. We know that they would have been giving yeoman service and doing their best at what they were doing. I want to assure you that we will continue to do our best. We will continue to innovate. We've started looking at the situation in the same way that you've analyzed it. We recognize those challenges, and we are going to give you the commitment, and the people of Trinidad and Tobago the commitment that we are going to continue to provide innovative solutions to the challenges that we face. We are going to, of course, certainly take on board your own observations, and we are hoping that by the next time we should meet again like this, that our interactions would be a lot different. But I really want to give you the assurance that we've been looking at this situation, and we are going to do the best we can to make the improvements necessary to the operations of the Forensic Science Center. Thank you.
We thank you very much for coming, and we ask that you would be provided refreshments for them. Yes. As usual, in the extension of parliamentary hospitality, we have provided a place and some refreshments for your use. We urge you to make use of them, and thank you again for coming. Good luck, and God bless each and every one of you. And this public hearing is now at an end. Members of the committee, we must keep our places for a short bit henceforth. Thank you. Thank you very much.